She was just 10 years old when she vanished into the forest. No screams, no broken branches, no trace, except the father who vanished with her. For 11 years her sisters searched alone, until the boots were found, half buried, one facing forward, one facing back, and nothing could have prepared her for what. Before we begin, tell me in the comments, do you believe people can be changed so deeply that even love can't bring them back? It wasn't the boots that broke her. It was the way they were facing. The smell of pine and wet moss hung low in the cold Montana air. A thin layer of fog rolled over the underbrush like it was hiding something it didn't want to give back. The birds weren't singing, the forest wasn't moving. And the only sound breaking the silence was the dull crunch of boots over brittle twigs as the search team made its way deeper into the ridge they had searched dozens of times before. Deputy Kyle Mason adjusted the strap on his shoulder and muttered something no one could hear. He'd walked these woods 11 years ago, fresh out of academy, full of hope and conviction that they'd find them. A father and daughter, gone without a trace. No blood, no footprints, just two names whispered like ghosts by a town that had long stopped believing they'd be found. But Kyle hadn't stopped. This was just another drone test. Some new tech for rescue efforts, mapping terrain, heat signatures, may be useful for fires. But the moment the screen lit up with a blurry silhouette, two tiny parallel impressions halfway down a steep ravine, something in his gut twisted, something old, something unfinished. He signaled the crew, and they descended carefully, each step into the slope slower, more deliberate. The sun was high, but it never reached this part of the ridge. The trees here stood like silent sentinels, guarding something with a secret. And there they were, a pair of children's boots, half buried in dead leaves, one upright, the other tilted, scuffed, muddy, but unmistakably out of place in a forest that had long been reclaimed by silence. Kyle dropped to one knee, brushing the dirt away like he was touching something sacred. His breath caught in his throat. The left boot was facing forward. The right one, backward. A chill ran down his spine. "Document everything," he whispered, voice cracking. "No one touches them." The camera clicked. The silence deepened. In town, Claire Dunning had stopped believing in signs. She'd stopped looking for omens, clues, or anything remotely divine years ago. But that morning, the power had flickered in her apartment just as she was washing her face. Her favorite mug, the one with her father's old hiking quote, "You're not lost if you keep walking," had slipped from the sink and shattered on the floor. She hadn't cried, just stood there, barefoot, in a puddle of ceramic and coffee-stained memory, letting the cold tile seep into her bones. She hadn't gone on the hike that day. She was 18, nursing a heartbreak, fighting with her dad over college. Her little sister Abby had begged her to come, said it would be fun. Said she missed the way things used to be. Claire had said no, and they never came back. She remembered the press conferences, the helicopters, the empty cots at the ranger station, her mother screaming at the sheriff, the way the neighbors started to avoid eye contact at grocery stores, the slow unraveling of her family's image, in a town that always preferred closure, even if it meant lying to itself. They'd called it an accident, said maybe they got lost, said maybe a bear, said maybe the cold, but they never found a body, never found a scrap of clothing, never found a note, just nothing, until now. Kyle's call came in just past noon. Claire stared at the name on her phone until it stopped ringing. He called again, and again. Finally, she answered. "Claire," he said, "we found something. You need to come." She didn't ask what, didn't need to. The way he said it, quiet, shaking like the words tasted like rust, it was enough. She drove up alone. Past the church her family used to attend, past the diner where her sister once spilled blueberry syrup down her overalls, past the old trail sign with a weather-worn map, still showing the same path they'd taken 11 years ago, the same path that had led nowhere. They met at the edge of the ravine. Kyle didn't speak at first, just pointed. Claire stepped forward, breath. The boots were smaller than she remembered, or maybe they weren't. Maybe time had just stretched her grief until everything seemed bigger than it was. She didn't touch them, couldn't. Just knelt beside them, staring at the worn edges, the laces, still tied. Then she saw it, a scratch, on the side of the left boot, like someone had taken a knife and carved something, a line, jagged and uneven, and another, a symbol or a warning. Kyle crouched beside her. "They weren't here before," he said quietly. "We searched this area hundreds of times. Dogs, teams, aerial scans, nothing. Now they're just here." Claire's voice was barely a whisper. "Someone moved them." He didn't respond. That night, Claire couldn't sleep. Her bed, boots still etched into her memory, replaying the angle they were facing. What did it mean? She went to the attic. Her father's journals were still in a box labeled Summer 13. She hadn't opened it in years. Inside were maps, notes, scribbled quotes, and one worn photo. Her dad, Abby, and her, smiling near the very ridge where the boots were found. Abby was wearing them, clear as day, same scuff on the toe. Claire flipped the photo, her father's handwriting. "Last hike before the storm. If we don't come back, always follow the boots." The apartment was too quiet. Claire Dunning sat at the small oak desk by the window, staring out at nothing in particular. Her fingers tapped absently against the rim of an untouched coffee mug, a new one, white with no quotes, no memories, no meaning. She had bought it on purpose, no weight, no emotion, just a cup. It didn't work. Outside, Missoula drifted in and out of early October. Red maples and school buses hummed past like Claire's classroom had been empty that day. In service. Ball. The boots still played in her. The left one forward, the right one back, like someone had been turning around, like Abby had hesitated. Claire blinked hard and opened the drawer in front of her. Inside were papers, old receipts, and a folded note from her mother, written 4 years ago on her birthday. She hadn't opened it. She still didn't. Sarah Dunning hadn't spoken to Claire in months. Their last conversation had ended with slammed doors and 2 loud words, "Let it go. I can't." Her mother had remarried, moved to Helena, painted over Abby's room with a pale gray, and planted begonias where her daughter's treehouse used to stand. To Sarah, closure was survival. To Claire, it was betrayal. 11 years had changed her. At 29, Claire carried herself with a quiet weight. People called it strength. It was grief, refined, sharp, and silent. She wore her hair shorter now, had a scar on her wrist from when she tripped on a trail 2 summers back and didn't tell anyone. She didn't date, didn't drink, didn't smile much unless it was for her students. History teacher by day, volunteer on missing persons forums by night. She spent weekends hiking alone with a GPS, marking places no one else had thought to search. She knew how people disappeared, not just physically, but piece by piece. How towns erased their names, how search teams rotated out, how silence became cement. But she never forgot. Her father, Tom, had been a known face in Missoula. Hiking guide, local handyman, and the kind of man who'd fix your fence for free if you brought him a beer. He loved pancakes, hated jazz, and had a soft spot for his daughters, especially Abby, his trail sprite. Claire remembered how he used to kiss Abby's forehead and say, "Where your boots go, your heart follows, so step light, little one." Now those boots were facing opposite directions in the middle of a forest they supposedly never entered. That night, Claire pulled out the journal again. Tom's handwriting danced across the page in uneven lines. He wasn't a writer, but he scribbled observations like breadcrumbs, cloud patterns, trail forks, rare birds Abby spotted, But one entry stood out, dated 3 days before the hike. If we follow the hollow ridge, we'll shave time off the climb. I've seen an old ranger hut on satellite. Might be useful in case of storm. Claire had never heard of a ranger hut. She turned the page, a single line, circled twice. I don't trust Halverson. Claire froze. Reed Halverson, owner of Trailman's Post, a supply store near the base trail. Tom had mentioned him dozens of times. Friendly, helpful, always offering gear discounts. He'd been one of the last people to see them alive. The next morning, Claire drove to Trailman's. The parking lot was cracked and faded, and the windows wore a dusty film like the store hadn't been cleaned since 2003. A hand-painted sign hung above the door. "What you need, we've got." She stepped inside. Bells jingled. Reed stood behind the counter, older now, hair thinner, eyes sharp. He looked surprised to see her. "Well, I'll be damned. Claire Dunning." "I need a map," she said flat. "The kind you don't sell to tourists." "You always had your father's fire?" Claire didn't smile. He pulled out a weathered roll from under the counter, old ranger charts with handwritten notes along the edges. She pointed. "Here, Hollow Ridge." "There used to be a hut?" His face shifted just a little. "Old ranger shelter," he said. "Collapsed long ago. Off-grid. Not safe." "Was it there in 2013? A pause. "I wouldn't know." "Funny. My dad thought you would." Something flickered behind his eyes. Claire left with the map, heart pounding. In the parking lot, she took a photo of the coordinates. Her hands trembled. Back in the apartment, she cross-referenced the spot with Google Earth. The satellite image from 2013 showed a clearing. Barely visible, but there. In the next image, 2015, it was gone. Overgrown. Or buried. She printed both, pinned them to the wall beside Abby's last school drawing, 2 stick figures on a hill, holding hands under a crooked sun. She dreamed of the boots again that night, but this time they were walking. Not Abby, not her dad, someone else in shadow, watching. Claire hadn't been back to the ridge since the search ended 11 years earlier. But now she stood at the edge of a hollow ridge, the map Reed had reluctantly sold her, folded tightly in her hand. Wind tore through the trees with a kind of silence that made her feel watched, like the forest knew what she was about to do. She took a deep breath. Then she stepped off the trail. Branches clawed at her jacket, and the ground beneath her boots grew uneven, slick with patches of rotting leaves. The canopy above let in barely any light. She moved carefully, each footstep deliberate. Her father had taught her that, don't fight the forest, feel it. Her heart pounded. Somewhere ahead, the supposed site of the ranger hut waited, but every step closer brought more questions than answers. It took an hour to find it, a clearing, a dip in the earth surrounded by dense brush. At first she thought it was just a depression in the ground, until she noticed the edges. Straight, artificial, like a structure had once stood there. Claire dropped to her knees and began to dig with her hands. Within minutes, she struck wood, soft, splintered, blackened by time. She brushed away the dirt and froze. Nailed to the wood, almost invisible beneath moss, was a rusted metal tag, faint lettering. She wiped it clean with her sleeve. R12, Forestry Shelter. Estuary, 1978. She stared. Her father hadn't made it up. She returned the next morning with gloves, tools, and a small trowel. Kyle had offered to come, but she'd said no. Not yet, not until she knew. Under the surface, she found remnants, rotted beams, scraps of canvas, a shattered lantern, and something glinting. She pried it out of the dirt, a zipper, tiny, pink, and next to it, buried deep in the roots of a tree, a metal button, shaped like a star. Claire's hands shook. Abby's jacket had a missing button, the same shape. She stumbled back, heart hammering. Then she heard it. Crunch. Not hers. Something moved just beyond the brush, too slow to be an animal. She turned, eyes scanning the dark tree line. Nothing. But the hairs on her arms stood straight. She wasn't alone. Claire returned to her car with the items in a sealed bag. The next day she showed them to Kyle. His jaw clenched. "You need to file this officially." "I can't. You found evidence." "I found something. If I go to the department now, they'll bury it. Again." He didn't argue. He didn't have to. They both remembered the way the sheriff back then had called it a tragedy, refused to extend the search, blamed weather, wolves, wild guesses. But Kyle was different now. "I'll help," he said. "But if we do this, we do it quiet. No press, no department." "Good," Claire said, "because I'm not stopping." That night, Claire's neighbor knocked. Sadie Boone, 70-something, lived downstairs. Had always been a little strange, knitted scarves for her cats, talked to the wind. But this time, "I heard the news," she said, clutching an old mug with shaking hands. "About the boots." Claire tensed. "What about them?" Sadie leaned in. "Your father came to see me the night before they left." Claire blinked. "What?" "I told the police. They never followed up." "What did he say?" Sadie's eyes clouded. "He asked if I still had my old forest map. Said he didn't trust the trail signs anymore. Said something was wrong." Sadie hesitated. "Only this. If we don't come back, don't believe what they tell you." Claire's blood turned to ice. That weekend, Claire walked the trail again, alone. At the sight of the hut, she dug further. Under a cracked plank, she found what looked like a piece of notebook paper, half shredded by water damage. One word was still legible. "Run." She began to notice other things. Her apartment door slightly ajar when she came home. Papers moved on her desk. The streetlight outside her window flickering in a pattern. An unfamiliar car parked across the street. Different plates every night. Kyle confirmed she was being watched. But by who? Claire visited the local library, dug through microfilm, old reports, ranger complaints. She found a file, never digitized, about a hiker named Matt Kessler who'd vanished on the same ridge in 2007. Unresolved. Similar trail. Same area. And then another. Lisa Reed, 1996. Same area. No remains. None of this had been in the news. She found the ranger who had filed the last report still alive. Retired. Living 2 counties away. She drove out to see him. He was frail, breathing through oxygen. But when she said the words, "Hollow Ridge," Claire leaned in. "Taking who?" He coughed. "It's not the forest. It's them." "Who?" He looked terrified. Then he said it. "The men who moved the signs." Claire felt like her world was splitting open. What signs? Who moved what? Was it possible that the trail markers were fake? That someone redirected hikers into the wrong paths? Why? Her father had said the same thing in his journal. "I don't trust the trail signs." And suddenly it all felt like more than bad luck, more than wolves, more than weather. It felt like a pattern, designed. She went back to Trailman's. Reed Halverson wasn't there. The woman behind the counter said he'd left town 2 days ago, no notice. Claire looked around. Something felt off. Then she saw it. Behind the counter, an old topographic map, pinned to the wall, one marker in red, R12. And beside it, another marker, even deeper into the forest. No name, no label. Just a red X. Claire took a photo. That night, her apartment was broken into, nothing stolen, except the map she'd printed and Abby's drawing. Claire barely slept after the break-in. The apartment no longer felt like hers. Every creak in the floorboards, every shadow cast by headlights outside seemed sharper, heavier, watched. She slept with her phone under her pillow, a flashlight on her nightstand, and a knife in the drawer. But fear didn't slow her. It focused her. The next morning, she drove straight to the county archives in Helena, 2 hours away, using a library ID Kyle had given her access to. She needed every land development permit, property survey, and Wilderness Report, tied to Hollow Ridge since 1980. She wasn't looking for the woods anymore. She was looking for who owned them. The discovery came mid-afternoon. A series of logging permits issued in the early 2000s granted to a shell corporation called Pine Mark Holdings. On paper, it looked legitimate: timber, conservation, trail, maintenance contracts. But Claire traced the ownership further. The shell company was linked to Lodestone Survey Group, a private security contractor used during the war in Iraq. One of its former directors, Reed Halverson. Her hands trembled. He hadn't just sold trail maps. He'd owned the damn land, and her father had trusted him. Claire met Kyle that evening in his truck behind an abandoned gas station. "You need to stop," he said. She handed him the printout. "I can't." He stared at the name, then back at her. "You're telling me Halverson was running something out there?" "I think my father found it. I think that's why they vanished." Kyle shook his head. "Claire, you realize what this means?" She nodded. "It means someone's willing to move signs, plant boots, burn evidence, and now they know I know." Kyle leaned back in the seat, silent. "Help me," she whispered. After a long pause, he handed her an envelope. "From the station archives, an old report I was never supposed to read." Inside was a copy of a 2013 field note, handwritten, unsigned. Site R12 perimeter marked. Access restricted per PM directive. If family reaches cabin, initiate contact. Terminate if necessary. Claire went cold. Terminate? Kyle looked sick. "I don't know who wrote that, but it was logged the day your family disappeared." The next morning, Claire drove to Sarah's house in Henna. Her mother looked shocked to see her. "What do you want?" Sarah asked from the doorway. "Answers." Sarah's eyes narrowed. "You think I didn't want answers? I buried your sister in my dreams 1,000 times. I lit candles for your father every Sunday. I memorized the number of days since I—" Claire said nothing. "I saw the boots on the news," Sarah continued, "and I wanted to pretend they weren't hers, but I knew." "There's more," Claire said softly. "There was a plan, a cover-up, and I think Dad tried to protect Abby." Sarah leaned against the doorframe. "I remember something." "The night before they left, Tom got a call. He wouldn't tell me from who. He just said we shouldn't go." "Then why did he?" "He said, 'It's safer if I go.'" Claire's breath caught. "He was trying to keep us out of it." Sarah nodded. Then her voice dropped lower. "And he left a box in the attic." The attic smelled of dust and cedar. Claire found the box buried under old coats and Christmas lights. Inside, a compass, a broken camera, and a cassette tape. She stared. It was labeled in her father's handwriting. "If you're hearing this, it means I didn't come back." Kyle helped her find an old tape recorder. They sat together in the truck. She pressed play. Tom's voice came through, rough, unsteady. "I found something in the ridge, an outpost. Cameras, gear. It's not logging, at least not only. I think they're running something, moving people maybe. I heard voices at night. Abby didn't understand. I told her we were playing a game, but I'm scared. If we don't make it out, know that I tried." The tape ended with silence. Claire wiped her face. Kyle looked stunned. "You have proof," he said. "They'll bury it. Then we go public." That night, Claire uploaded a digital copy of the tape to a secure server. But before she could press send, the screen went black. Her laptop shut down. The power cut. In the darkness, her phone buzzed with a single text. "Run." She fled the apartment and drove to Kyle's place. They stayed up all night planning. The next morning, Claire received a package on Kyle's porch. No return address. Inside, a photo of Abby, sitting alone on the cabin steps, dated 2 days after the official disappearance date. And a note: she was alive. Claire collapsed to the floor. The photo haunted Claire. She stared at it for hours. Abby sitting on the wooden steps of the ranger cabin, legs crossed, dirt on her knees. She was looking down, fiddling with something in her hands. A ribbon, her favorite one, striped pink and orange. But it was the reflection in the window behind her that mattered now. The outline of a man, tall, still, wearing a uniform, a ranger. Claire ran it through software, sharpening, adjusting contrast, even using filters Kyle provided from police archives. It didn't give her a face, but it gave her a patch. Lolo National Forest Division, and on the shoulder, the faded letters J. Merrow Kyle. Pulled the name from the old roster. Jeremiah Merrow, employed from 1997 to 2014. No digital trail after his resignation, no forwarding address, no family listed. Off the grid, Kyle muttered. Classic cleanup. But why was he there, Claire asked. Why was Abby alone and he wasn't helping? They had no answers, so they drove. The ranger station, where Merrow had been based, sat on the far side of the forest, mostly abandoned now, converted into a wildlife reserve office. Claire and Kyle posed as journalists writing about forgotten trail systems. The woman behind the desk was helpful, oblivious. She handed over a dusty personnel log. Claire flipped pages until she found it. Merrow, Jeremiah C., noted as Field Supervisor, Restricted Zone Access. What zone? Claire asked. The woman raised an eyebrow. Oh, that must refer to the old containment site, North Ridge, closed off after a fire in 2009. Containment for what? She shrugged. You'd have to ask forestry. Kyle leaned in. Anyone still working from that team? Just one I know of, she said. David Renner, retired, lives down near Rivali. Bit odd. Claire smiled. Perfect. David Renner lived in a weather-beaten house at the edge of a ravine, surrounded by rusted bird feeders and silent wind chimes. He didn't open the door at first. Then Kyle flashed a badge. Inside, the air smelled like dust and menthol. Renner walked slowly, hunched from age, but his eyes were alert, sharp, watching. Claire showed him the photo. He froze. That cabin's gone, he said. I know, Claire said, but who's this? Renner stared. That's not Merrow, he said. At least not officially. Claire's breath caught. What do you mean? He sat slowly. Merrow ran something out there, Renner said. Off books. Said it was a training program for wilderness recovery, but they never brought anyone back, ever. Kyle's voice was tight. What was it, really? Renner didn't answer at first. Then he nodded toward a filing cabinet. Bottom drawer, folder marked Blacktail. Claire opened it. Inside were photos, maps, and a list of names. Dozens. All marked as non-recovered. Abby's name was there. Next to her, in red ink, observed post-event, relocated. Claire's heart stopped. What does relocated mean? Renner looked away. It means she wasn't dead. Back at Kyle's place, they read every file. The logs described containment procedures, trail diversions, even behavioral assessments of subjects found wandering the ridge. And then, on the last page, a handwritten note. J.D. confirmed removal protocol. Subject 042, Abigail D., separated for transport, status alive. Claire couldn't breathe. They took her, she whispered. They separated her. She was alive. My God, she was alive. Kyle sat in stunned silence. All these years, they didn't sleep. At dawn, they drove to the last marker on the trailman's map, the red X deep beyond Hollow Ridge, a place not marked on any official guide. No signage, no path. They hiked in silence. After 5 hours, they reached it. The ground dipped, forming a perfect bowl of earth surrounded by unnatural fencing. Barbed wire, long, rusted. A gate, twisted open. Inside, remnants of temporary shelters, ductwork, solar panels, trash, and a door, metal, buried into a hillside, locked. Claire crouched near the entrance. Her fingers brushed something in the dirt. A bracelet, plastic, faded letters. B-B-Y. Kyle forced the lock. The door groaned open, stale air spilled out, cold, metallic, dry. They descended a narrow stairwell. Flashlights flickered against walls lined with peeling paint and clipboards. It had been abandoned in a hurry. Rooms held bunks, medical equipment, observation logs, cameras still pointing at empty beds. Claire found a folder marked S-42. Inside, sketches of Abby, notes about her emotional stability, resistance to environmental stress, speech delay following isolation period. The final note chilled her. Subject shows increased responsiveness to maternal voice recordings. Recommend full transfer to Site B within 24 HRs. Claire sank to the floor. They were studying her, she whispered. She was a child, and they were treating her like a specimen. Kyle was pale. This wasn't just survival. This was a program. They heard a noise. Footsteps, not theirs. Someone else was inside. They killed the lights, waited. A beam of light passed the hallway, slow, methodical. Then a voice, male, calm. "Claire," she froze. "I know you're here." The voice was familiar. Too familiar. She turned the corner, and there he was, Reed Halverson, alive, armed, smiling. "I told your father to walk away," he said. "But he thought he could save you." Claire's voice cracked. "What did you do to Abby?" Reed tilted his head. "We gave her a purpose." Kyle raised his gun. Reed didn't flinch. "Go ahead," he said. "Shoot me. It won't change what's coming." Claire's hands shook. Then he dropped a folder on the floor. It slid to her feet. Inside, a girl, now a teenager, hair darker, face older, but unmistakably Abby, smiling, in a white room, holding a clipboard, wearing a lab coat. Claire couldn't move. She stared at the photo in her hands. Abby, older, different, changed. The smile was hers, not quite. The softness in her eyes had hardened. She looked precise, clinical, unreachable. Her heart broke in real time. Kyle knelt beside her. "Claire?" She shook her head, gripping the folder to her chest like it could anchor her to the past. No, this isn't. She's supposed to be gone. She's supposed to be—" She couldn't say it. Kyle didn't speak. "I spent 11 years looking for her. I imagined her in a forest, hurt, cold, waiting for me." Tears streamed down her face. She wasn't lost. And now she's one of them. Reed stood in the doorway, calm, unaffected. "She adapted," he said. "Better than anyone." Claire's voice was venom. "You brainwashed her." Reed raised a brow. "We gave her structure, education, resources." "She was 10. He shrugged. "She was strong, not like your father." Kyle's fist clenched. "You killed him." Reed's gaze darkened. "He got in the way." Claire lunged. Kyle held her back. Reed didn't move. "Where is she?" Claire growled. "Now, where is she?" "She's not here. But she'll come. Eventually. She always does. She watches the old sites." What does that mean?" "She's part of the team now," Reed said. "Search and containment. You'll see her again. On their terms." Then he turned and walked into the dark hallway. They let him go. Because at that moment Claire didn't want revenge. She wanted her sister back. Later they sat in the truck. Rain fell against the windshield in slow, erratic taps. Kyle drove in silence. Claire stared ahead. "She's alive." "I know. But what if she doesn't remember me?" Kyle looked at her. "She does." Claire nodded slowly. Then she reached into her coat pocket, pulled out the bracelet, the one from the dirt outside the shelter. "I'm going back," she said. Kyle didn't ask where. He knew. Over the next 2 days, Claire prepared. She studied the maps, replayed the tape of her father, reviewed the files, every note, every protocol, every location Abby had been observed at. She marked them in red. One stood out. A decommissioned observation post near a waterfall, marked S Theta, last active 2 years ago, but referenced in Abby's progress log. Claire packed water, a radio, Abby's bracelet, and the tape. Kyle handed her a burner phone. You call me if anything goes wrong." "I will." He hesitated, then hugged her. "Bring her home." The hike was brutal. Dense brush, high elevation, no trail. Claire slipped more than once, scraping her hands, twisting her ankle on a rock. But she didn't stop. Every step brought her closer to something she both feared and needed. When she reached the waterfall, the sun was setting. The sound roared, mist coated her jacket. The observation site sat on a ledge, abandoned but still intact, concrete, cold, hollow. She stepped inside. It was empty. But there on the ground was a mark, a small star carved into the floor, Abby's symbol. Claire collapsed to her knees, and she cried. Night fell. She built a small fire outside and waited, and hours passed. Then the crunch of leaves, soft, deliberate. Claire stood. Shadows shifted beyond the trees. Then a figure emerged, smaller than expected, slender, long hair pulled back, a flashlight off in her hand. Claire's heart stopped. The girl stepped into the firelight, and there she was. Abby, 17, maybe 18, taller, stronger, but her eyes were the same. They stared at each other in silence. Then Claire stepped forward, hand trembling, holding the bracelet. "I kept this," she said. Abby looked at it, and then she ran. Claire chased her through the trees, calling out, "Abby, please, it's me." Branches slashed her arms, rocks tore her jeans. The forest blurred with motion and memory. Abby stumbled. Claire caught her. They fell. Silence. Then Abby looked up, tears in her eyes. "Why didn't you come?" Claire froze. "I tried," she whispered. "I never stopped." Abby broke down. "They told me you forgot. They told me you gave up." "I didn't. I couldn't." "I looked everywhere." Abby clung to her, and for the first time in 11 years, they were together. They sat under the stars for hours. Abby spoke in pieces, memories buried under programming, routines, protocols. They showed me videos, told me it was better this way, that I'd been abandoned. But I always remembered your voice. Claire sobbed. "I was so scared." "I know. I didn't know what was real anymore." "You're real to me," Claire said. "That's all that matters." Abby pulled the bracelet over her wrist. It still fit. But just before dawn, headlights glowed in the distance. A black SUV. "They found me," Abby said, voice flat. Claire stood. "Then we run." Abby shook her head. "They'll come for you." "I don't care." Abby way. "You don't know what they are, what they'll do." Claire held her tighter. "I'm not losing you again." They didn't run far, just far enough to disappear. Claire and Abby crossed 2 state lines by dawn, hiking through wetlands and farmland, catching rides from truckers who didn't ask questions. Abby's forest skills had sharpened over the years. She knew how to stay hidden, how to read maps without GPS, how to listen to the world instead of looking at it. Claire watched her with awe and sadness. Abby had grown up in the cracks between stories. They found shelter in an old ranger cabin in Oregon. This one real, this one abandoned, this one safe. No cameras, no experiments, no ghosts, except the ones they brought with them. They stayed off the grid. Claire wrote in a notebook every day about the search, the pain, the discovery, the reunion. She wanted to remember everything, not just for herself, but for her father, for the girl who had been told she was forgotten. Abby didn't speak much that first week. Then one night, while they sat watching fireflies from the back porch, she asked, "Do you still have his voice?" Claire nodded. She pulled out the old tape player, pressed play. Tom's voice came through, quiet and cracked. "If you're hearing this, it means I didn't come back." Abby shut her eyes. Claire reached over, held her hand. "He came back," Claire said softly, "through us." They changed their names. Claire became Emily. Abby chose June. She said it felt warmer, softer, like the month she wished she'd grown up in. They stayed in the cabin for 63 days. On the 64th, someone left a package at the door. No footsteps, no sound. Just a small box. Inside, a photograph. Abby, Claire, and Tom at the base of Hollow Ridge. A photo Claire had never seen before. Abby wore the same boots they'd found. On the back, in Tom's handwriting, "She knows the way home." Claire broke, because somehow, even in death, he had kept a part of Abby alive. One morning Abby asked, "What happens now?" Claire didn't answer, because she didn't know. They couldn't go back. The world that had once held them no longer existed. The people in charge of the program were still out there, watching, hiding, waiting. But they had each other. For now. A month later, Claire sent an anonymous envelope to a national journalist. It contained a copy of Tom's cassette, the list of names from Blacktail, photos from the site, Abby's bracelet, and a letter. "They took her, but I got her back, and I won't be the last. Tell their stories. Let the forest speak." Back in Missoula, Kyle received a postcard with no return address, a photo of a mountain sunrise. On the back, "Still walking, still finding the way." He smiled. The program was never officially exposed. The journalist vanished weeks after publishing a partial report. But whispers began. Trails once hidden were blocked, rangers reassigned, old files erased, but not all of them. Somewhere in the system, echoes remained, because truth doesn't rot like wood or fade like ink. It lingers, especially when planted in grief. Years passed. Abby turned 21 in a town that never knew her name. She got a tattoo, a small star just above her ankle. She said it helped her remember who she'd been and who she chose to become. Claire opened a bookstore near the coast. No internet, just paper, stories, quiet. Abby worked there on weekends. They never spoke of the men who moved the signs again, but sometimes, when the wind shifted, Claire swore she could smell pine, and she'd whisper, "Where your boots go, your heart follows." One night they watched an old VHS tape Tom had made, a home movie, grainy, full of laughter. In it, Abby is 6, Claire is 15. Tom is off camera, joking. The screen flickers. Then Tom's voice says, "Say it again, girls." "What do we always say before a hike?" And 2 young voices echo, "If we don't come back, follow the boots." Claire paused the tape. Tears in her eyes, Abby smiled. "I found my way." Claire reached over and whispered, "So did I." It wasn't the boots that broke her. It was the way they were facing. They were facing forward again.